So hello again, everyone, and welcome to the next in our series of COVID-19 webcasts that we're bringing to you from Travel Weekly every day to keep you connected the industry and some of the key people running the industry. And so today I'm really delighted to be joined by Jo Kolatsis, who is the founder of Themis Advisory, one of our legal brains in the travel industry, and also by Julia Bue-Said, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Advantage Travel Partnership. So thank you both so much for joining me. Really busy time for you both. I know how hard it is to keep up with everything, so to give us your time is great. Julia, I wanted to start with you, if I may. You obviously run a big consortium, lots of members, both leisure and business. We haven't spoken to you yet since this whole situation kicked off, well, not on video anyway. So perhaps you could just give us a snapshot of what you and your members have been going through and what the key challenges have been and that you're still facing.
Yeah, hi Lucy, and hi Jo. I think it's obviously been a period of unsettlement right the way through the membership. And if I think about what we were doing 4 weeks ago and the challenges we had actually even yesterday, they're very different to where we are now. And one thing I've certainly learned in talking to our members about, you almost have to take every day as it comes right now, because things are changing so quickly. So what we've seen the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks is a change from very vibrant businesses, very busy people dealing with first and foremost it's always about the consumer and dealing with their consumer holidays or travel trips. And all of a sudden dealing with consumers who, quite rightly so, are coming out the other end very angry because they're unable to have those plans fulfilled, but also are waiting for refunds. And so that's creating a huge amount of issues for the membership. And I think one of the things that's been quite clear right the way throughout this is that our agents are in the firing line all the time. They're the middle person that sits between the supplier and the tour operator, and they are having very difficult conversations. I mean, there are some great success stories which we mustn't forget about also, but some very difficult conversations with their customers around around refunds and unable to fulfill those. So that remains the single biggest issue, alongside so many other issues, alongside the fact that a lot of our members have furloughed employees, so they're even busier now with no business coming in than they were before. So that is a huge issue, and plus the suppliers we're working with the furloughed staff, so even our key people aren't around for us to be able to engage with. So there is a continued combination of matters that are making our agents' lives exceptionally difficult. And actually the really sad part of all of this is they built their businesses on their relationships, on their local marketplace, have great long-standing relationships with their customers, and actually feel that they're letting them down right now. That's how our members feel, but actually they have no choice. And one of the things that we're trying to, and we will launch this a bit late, hopefully this week, is really trying to give our members as much collateral around the refund process, so they can explain that really clearly to consumer. And part of me thinks, well, actually it's not the consumers have to worry about that, and actually that's right. However, from an agent's point of view, those who are acting on behalf of their tour operator partners, it's a difficult conversation to have, but also a very difficult one to comprehend when you've parted money. When a consumer's parted money and given that to their agent, what we want to try and do is be able to give our members as much information and collateral as they can to be able to articulate, explain to the consumer how those flow of monies work. And so, yeah, it remains the single biggest issue, Lucy. Very challenging, very difficult times, amongst everything else that the agents are trying to deal with.
Yeah, well, you rightly, I mean, you make the point there, Julia, that actually the consumer doesn't really care what the process is, do they? They just want their money back. A lot of them are in a desperate situation, and we are increasingly writing about or getting examples where very emotional, or even aggressive towards travel agents. When you said your guys are on the front line, let's bring Jo in. Julia talked there about giving them some guidance. I know you work closely with Advantage. What advice are you giving them? And particularly because we've got Apters advising one thing, but you've got lots of suppliers doing very different things, and so that must be quite confusing. And so to give a definitive guide that Julia's talking about, we'll ask you a bit more about it in a minute, but what is your advice then to Advantage and your other clients, Jo?
Yeah, so I mean, Advantage have been great from the outset, because they did come out in support of the Apter guidance, and I think that is essentially where I've been at since day one, with not only Advantage but with other people that we're working with, because I think in the absence of any formal change to the law, which we don't have yet, we're still waiting on the PTR's change, and fingers crossed we get some positive news on that this week. But in the absence of that, Apter did stick their head above the parapet and did give some guidance for the industry to follow. And it's guidance that means the consumer's money will not be at risk if people follow that refund credit note process. And so, you know, I share Julia's frustration on that, because I think Apter have given this template, they've made it as simple as they can for people to follow. So it doesn't make sense when people deviate from that, because we are then making it difficult for everybody and not giving consumers the clarity that they need.
So why do you think people are deviating when there is this guidance? And I know it's not law, because there's not been a change to the law, so I know it is only guidance. Do you think do you think that's the reason? And they're going, well, it's not definitive, this is not sort of set in stone, so we'll just work around it. Why are they not all conforming?
I think people are doing whatever they can to try and preserve their businesses, right? So I do get that everyone is in survival mode, but at the same time, the one thing that I've said to a lot of people, and Julia and I have spoken about this at length, is that as an industry, we have an opportunity here to self-regulate in a very fair way, pending a change to the PTRs. And if we are all coming at it from a different way, we're going to force the regulators to take action, and we don't want that. I think what Apter have proposed is fair and reasonable. It doesn't necessarily fit everyone, but then the PTRs were never a one-size-fits-all regulation for every type of holiday business or travel business. So it is the only guidance we have that is sensible under the circumstances, and I think if everybody follows it, we then give a very straight, strong message to consumers that is still consumer-focused, that doesn't take away their right to a refund. That's not what anybody wants. It's just about helping consumers understand that because of the process in which the travel industry has to follow when booking travel arrangements, they need a bit more time to process these refunds or find alternative arrangements. I mean, the regs were never built for any of this. They were never built for a worldwide global shutdown, which is what we're dealing with. So where normally the travel industry is really great and agile at finding alternatives and giving customers choices, they've been left with none at the moment. So it's just about working together. And Julia's right, there's some great success stories out there. So where people are talking to their customers and explaining some of this, I've heard all sorts of stuff. Customers voluntarily paying admin fees just to help the business. So, you know, they don't have to, they're given a choice, but they're happy to pay them because they get that these guys on the end of the phone are dealing with a difficult situation. Great bookings for next year, so 2021, with people offering added incentives. And at the same time, just giving customers that reassurance. So I think it's where you're not being upfront and transparent and then doing something different or at odds to the rest of the industry that you're going to see problems.
So Jo's sort of outlined some of the good practices that have been happening, but then saying there is some less so. What kind of things are you seeing, Julia? I'm not asking you to name names, but I mean, you must have some tour operators. Well, we've heard of some that are just not offering a refund at all, not just the refund credit note, which would defer it. What other things are you give us an idea of what your customers are having to face, your members are having to deal with.
So the biggest one really is where tour operators who our members have booked their customers' holidays through are refusing, which they can't do, but are refusing to refund, not actually even engaging in the conversation. So and that's what we're faced with. And so that to then have that conversation with your customer becomes a very difficult one to have. But the other thing we're finding, a lot of it is in the details. So some of so you've got, in one hand, you've got operators who are, there are no refunds. You're not even able to engage with them. You're not even able to have a conversation with them. You can't get through to them. So you've got that extreme. You've got another extreme of those who are being fantastic in the situation, are really going all out to try and support and help our members, and our relationship in that is really helping. So, you know, the team are able to have those conversations because of the relationships we've got. And I think on that, the only point I want to make on that relationship area as well is, you know, we will all remember those partners that are helping us through this. You know, we will absolutely remember that. You know, this will not be forgotten. This is not a one-time wonder. This stands us in good stead moving forward, and everyone is feeling pain in our personal lives, in our work lives, in every aspect. So we have to have some pain or feel some pain. That's no excuse on how you treat people, and that's one thing that is coming through. Those that are standing up, who are really supporting the trade, supporting their customers, are the ones that we will be engaging with in the future. Those that don't, we won't. That's
really interesting, because actually I remember years ago, Julia, writing a story when you were the first consortia, I think, to set up a sort of preferred supplier list, and they had various criteria that they had to meet in order to get on your list. I mean, I'm talking some time ago, and I suspect everybody's got those in place now. But is this will you have a sort of a blacklist, a sort of COVID-19 blacklist of people that basically made your members' life really difficult, and that you're just going to say, sorry, even if you come crawling back, we're not going to give you that distribution?
I think, to be fair, I think members are building those lists already. I don't think that's going to take a lot of persuading, because, you know, that these are the times when, you know, we talk about preferred partnerships, or what does it stand for? If it's not about supporting you through these difficult times. So the other point I just wanted to make also, you know, the great thing and the successes that we're seeing with our members, and not just our members, but the travel agency community, is that they are human. You know, so actually we're all craving for that human touch, where we're all needing to speak to people now. Our members are just doing everything to make sure that they're communicating with their customers in a really open and transparent manner. So that human connection, that human agent, is really starting to come through. Just as an example, so one of my eldest son had a booking with, and I won't name them, but they were a huge online player, ATOL certificate in hand, made a booking with them. You cannot get through to them, cannot speak to them. And actually, when you were able to speak to them, they were insisting that you had to go off and speak to the individual suppliers. So I had to go and speak to the airline separately, the hotel separately. But I've got an ATOL booking here, you know, and I know that, and I'm in the industry. I have an ATOL booking here, but actually you cannot get to speak to them. So our agents now have the opportunity to really shine through these horrific times and make sure that they are demonstrating to the consumer why they are the agents of choice. Yeah. They're the human travel agents with a human experience, who are going, you know, working 24/7 to do everything they can to support the travel agents. Yeah. I have no interest in speaking to a faceless business anymore. I want to speak to an individual and a person.
Yeah, absolutely, and give that reassurance. So this could be an opportunity. I know it's very difficult at the minute, but you're saying that it's, you know, if they can keep going and survive and get through this, then they should see an opportunity the other side.
You know, I really believe that, and I really think what we all need right now is honesty and transparency, and that communication, and your communication style, your tone, your PR as opposed to marketing. All of that is really, really important. The tone of voice is really, you know, actually when you're dealing with people who are, as I said before, we're all feeling pain at different points in our life. So when you're dealing with individuals who have, you know, spent money with your business, who need that money because of the certain situations they find themselves in, you have to be compassionate, you have to show empathy. But actually, if you can't get through to somebody, and if somebody's just throwing, you know, excuse after excuse and saying, well, actually, you're not going to get a refund, that, you know, that's not an industry I want to be part of. But, you know, and that's not what our industry stands for. So it's really sad to see that we are being tarnished, that there is that, you know, there is a...
Well, there's reports now, because of course people don't necessarily understand the difference between a tour operator and a traveller, and I know that's blurred over the years anyway, but there's lots of reports in the national news around, you know, agents being complicit in this whole sort of, you know, not giving the money back, and actually, you know, that does, as you say, tar them often with a brush that, you know, it's not their fault, they can't get the money. And then I know that tour operators are saying they can't get the money from airlines. I just wanted to ask Jo actually on that point. We saw a piece in Travel Weekly this morning written by Clive Ratton, Business Travel. So he was saying that he's starting to see the airlines now releasing some money, which is trickling down to the TMCs. Is that, are you seeing that happening? And is that something that will happen for leisure as well?
I think so. I hope so. I think the issue with the airlines is it's a difficult one. They are in a very similar position to the entire industry, where they too are trying to preserve cash, right? So they are also going for their own regulatory changes and moratoriums on things like EC 261, and so I think what they're trying to do. But however, I do think you're starting to see airlines now engage with suppliers and partners a bit more to try and make sure some of that money is coming back. So Julia's just given her own example of, where airline gave a refund on on her son's booking. And I think where you are getting through to some of these airlines, I'm hearing that they are honouring the refunds, but you've got to get through to have the conversation. And that's part of the problem. And I do know that the regulators...
That makes it very hit and miss, doesn't it? Shouldn't there just be a blanket policy, not just if you can get through, you might get lucky?
Yeah, and I think the regulators have also started to get involved where they know the airlines are not sticking to the rules. And this is why I think we go back to that collaboration. So if we can get a set of rules that we are all, I wouldn't say happy with, comfortable with, given the circumstances, where we can all say, right, we're all taking a bit of that pain that Julia mentioned, then it gives the consumers clarity. Suppliers know what they do or don't have to give back. Operators know what they have to pass back. And then the agents can have those conversations.
Yeah. Well, I think you both make the point that if we were all giving the same message, or all agents giving the same message and saying, look, we just need a bit of time, we need a grace period, you will get your money back. But of course you get some consumers who go, well, I got my money back straight away. Someone else saying, I'm not being given a refund at all. That's not even an option. So I guess that's very hard. Jo, I just wanted, before I come back to Julia, I just want to ask you another thing. Right at the start, you said you were hoping that there might be some clarification this week. Do you know something that we don't?
No. I wish I did. No.
Well, we've been waiting, haven't we? Every week we think, is this the week there's going to be some new guidance or some clarification? So do you think, I mean, other people are saying, do you know what, it's dragged on so long now, I don't think anything.
I have heard that too, but I am hopeful that, and this is why I think if Apters guidance is going to persuade the government that this is why it's a reasonable change or a relaxation to the PTRs for this instance, I think if we can show that it works and it's not going to cost them any more money than it would do if all of these businesses fail, that's going to be a lot worse for them. And that's the point. That's what I'm saying. I'm hoping that we still carry some weight in that argument. I do feel like the government is probably trying to tie up airlines and the wider sector together because they are part of the same sector. So I think the more divided voices we have, the harder it is for them to marry the two. I mean, ultimately, it's still all going to the Transport Secretary, isn't it? So we need them to be comfortable with what we're suggesting, along with BEIS and the CAA and everybody, to bring everyone together and just say this works for consumers. It gives the industry the lifeline it needs, but we're not taking money away from people that need it or want it back. We just need a bit of time while we work our way through the process. So I'm still hopeful. I don't want to think that it's dead in the water.
And what about both of you, your views on the dates? Because of course, originally Apters was advising that if they gave these refund credit notes, that the refunds would still have to be paid by July the 31st. Then there was new guidance, I think, last week, depending on when suppliers were bonded or got their bonds. So that it could now be extending right out until March 2021 or even later. So how are customers going to feel about that, Julia? Will they take a refund credit note knowing that they still might not get their money back for a year?
Yeah, I think, the great thing that we're finding is a lot of business has been rebooked. So, we're probably anywhere between, I'd say at the minute, 60 to 70%, some agents more, of business rebooked for next year.
Okay.
So that's a real positive, and the agents are able to have that conversation. But of course, where consumers clearly do want, that's not the option for them and they want a refund, giving the operators, more chance to securely ensure that the customer money is protected until that point, just gives, we're always between a rock and a hard place, aren't we? Because, from an industry point of view, we completely understand and not naive to the pressures that everyone is under, but is that in line with the right thing to do for the consumer? I think we're in between a rock and a hard place. The right thing for the consumer is refunds straight away. That just can't happen for the reasons we know. But giving the businesses that bit more time, but I think what it does, it gives the consumer that peace of mind that there is that financial protection in place if they decide to accept a credit refunds for later, and it's valid for a longer period.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just on the, I mean, you mentioned there about how many, that sounds like a good rate to me, up to 70% rebooking, which is fantastic because it keeps, the money in the industry, which obviously is going to help everybody. We were talking to some cruise lines last week, and they were saying they were protecting commissions on the cancel booking and the new booking. Is that widespread with lots of operators, or is that just pertinent to cruise? I mean, are you finding that agents are getting their commissions sort of protected and they're getting it twice, that rebooking as well?
Yeah, some are better. Cruise lines are pretty good. Cruise lines, I've got to say, are very good at this. So we're seeing that support come through, which is fantastic. But I think, as in all these things, you have some partners or some operators that are better than others at doing that. So it's not widely spread, but you have the same. It really varies, to be honest, Lucy.
Okay, all right. You're not going to tell me who else is not doing.
Yeah.
Let's go back because well, we want to see your list eventually, but I wanted to just come back to some of the things you were saying, Julie, because I'm conscious of time. But I think some stuff around the sort of human side of things, and obviously you mentioned that a lot of your members have had to furlough staff. I think you've had to yourselves in head office. How is that scheme working for the industry, both, tour operators, because obviously you're saying you can't get through to some people and you probably understand why, because they've not got the team there, and also agents who are sort of working from home with all these forward bookings. We've heard reports that it's been a lifeline in many ways, but hasn't really addressed the specific needs of travel. What's your view? I'd get a view from both of you, please.
Yeah, I think the big issue we've got is actually our agents, and all of us are working harder now than we ever did, really. So agents are still busy. It's they haven't closed up shop, and there is no work to be carried out. So the problem you have, the problem you've got is the reality of having, you need that furlough scheme, and from one aspect it's a lifeline, but the reality is it does not work for the industry because agents are still having to, sorry, not agents, but the whole industry is still busy processing rebookings, refunds, in a much wider scale. So yeah, it's not ideal for the industry. So I think we recognise that it's a lifeline to a certain point, but actually you've got a lot less people dealing with consumers. So actually, if a business who maybe before all this had an exemplary customer service, how have they managed to carry that out now? And it's almost impossible. You're having to wait, to get through to any business right now. So, and I see some have changed minds and brought staff back, which is great. So, I think it's just the knock-on impact it's having for businesses is quite significant.
Yeah, and Jo, it's been extended for a month. I think a lot of people were hoping it might be longer than that, and I think there's been some nervousness or concern in the industry that actually that once that time is up, people will not be able to survive. There will be a rash of redundancies because businesses are very different. We'll be very changed coming out of this. What's your view?
Well, I think this all goes back to, if we can secure some regulatory change that gives those businesses a lifeline in terms of how long they can have to process refunds, how long those refund credit notes are available, then it gives businesses some clarity in order to be able to give clarity to then their employees, right? So once that furlough scheme ends, when the dust sort of settles, where are you at? What can you then do with your business? What changes are you going to have to make? I think it would probably be a bit naive to suggest that we won't see some redundancies after this, because, like Julia said, everyone's taking some pain here. We're all seeing big changes being made now just so that people can get through this period. I don't think we'll be able to just pick up the day after lockdown ends and carry on as though nothing happened. It's going to be a slow emergence. I do feel that people sitting at home that have been sitting at home for a while will want to make bookings and will want to get away, maybe purely out of boredom, but it just depends on their own personal circumstances too. And the people that work in the industry are also affected. Their families have been affected. Their jobs are on the line. So everyone's kind of in it together. And that's why I think, like Ju says, the more open we are and transparent we are, if we can get some regulatory change that just gives us a decent framework, then hopefully you can minimise whatever the potential impacts are on those businesses once we get back going again.
Yeah, having knowledge so you can make decisions. Of course, at the moment, it's just a little bit up in the air. Jo just said there, Julia, that she thinks people will, you know, when the lockdown's lifted, of course it will, you know, your view is it will be a stage thing. It's not going to suddenly all come back. But what are you looking ahead to, Julia? And what are you advising your members in terms of the comeback? And I know you've introduced a new marketing campaign just last week around the bucket list. And so what are you sort of talking to them about in terms of like the future?
Yeah, so we're so obviously right now everyone is very busy with the here and now, but one of the things that we're talking to members about is let's not forget that it will come back. There will be a rebound. None of us know what that is going to look like. So the campaign we launched last week, the bucket list reboots, is really also linked with trying to engage with consumers and understand what the consumer sentiment will be. So we've got a consumer poll, which is not just for our members, but it's industry wide, and we'll share the results with the industry as well, around actually how does the consumer feel today about that next trip, and what could that look like. So our advice to our members at the minute is, you know, keep communicating with consumers, keep those lines of communication open. Make sure they're using the time, if they've got the time, to look at their database and cleanse their database, and make sure that once we're out of this, because we will be, and we can start thinking about the rebound, that they're in the best possible position to take that forward. So I think it's, you know, we all need a glimmer of hope. We all need that light at the end of the tunnel. I saw a plane yesterday and I was so excited. I hadn't seen a plane in the sky for weeks. So it will come
I saw
back.
you even tweeted a picture of it. I saw it.
I was so excited. But we need that. Look, people will travel, businesses will travel, it will come back. We do not know what the world is going to look like when we come out of it. So we all have to do the best, make our own judgments based on our own business and our own communication styles as to how we engage with the consumer throughout this. But I think for me, the key is keep those communication lines open with the customer, and make sure they know you're there. And so the minute we're out of this, you can start with the relevant communications to them.
Yeah, you mentioned there about we need that hope and we need to stay optimistic. It's great to hear that from you, and I can see Jo nodding as well. But it is a difficult time, isn't it? It's very difficult, and there are some people who probably can't see the wood from the trees at all. I'm wondering what kind of calls, and I don't want you to reveal any secrets, but I mean, I know that you probably had some pretty desperate calls from members who perhaps feel that they're not going to get out of this, and you know, that also plays into the whole mental health issue, which I know has been a big you know, focus for Advantage before this. I imagine it's become even more important now. So do you have members, Julia, that are seriously worried that they're not going to survive, and how do you deal with that on a sort of, you know, business but also sort of mental health level?
It's really difficult. You know, I know all our members, and you know, the whole team has a great relationship with all of them, and you're having conversations with people about their lives. You know, it's not just business, it's their lives. So we mustn't forget that. And actually, we're all dealing with individuals who have their own circumstances outside of business that they're dealing with. So yeah, we've had some really tough conversations and really distressing conversations. But I mean, touch wood, so far, you know, the membership is really strong. You know, they're in a really good place. They're smart business people and are making smart decisions and are doing what they need to do to get through this. So you know, we've got to just keep optimistic that, you know, they will come through this, whatever that looks like. You know, everyone is completely mothballed their businesses. So actually there is, you know, that's great because they're agile enough to be able to do that. So we saw that right from the start, that members knew exactly what they had to do, when they had to do it, and are making those changes as they go on. I think the mental health side is something, as you say, we've been really focused on, and we've been running Wellness Wednesdays for, you know, the last few weeks, and our videos. So we release our 6 p.m. bulletins every day, and they're just very short, concise videos, you know, not just for our members, but for the whole industry. Again, it's our little way of staying united. And but you know, focusing on mental health is really important. And I actually think coming out of this, so we're all trying to be really strong, and we have to be. I mean, I've shed a tear. I've gone to bed shedding a tear, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, and I'm sure we all have, because it's tough. But we all have to find a way of, you know, gaining that inner strength from somewhere. You know, and it is really difficult. And again, we all have our own individual circumstances, but you know, the members are very resilient, they're very strong, very good business people. And I think, you know, if they hold in true to their values, and that's around honesty, transparency, consumer interaction, etc. And I think so long as we can all stay united, and we're not disjointed as an industry, because that doesn't help our mental health either, because that you know, that sets it off into a different direction. But if we can just we're all in it together, so come on, let's stay united. There's no bad cop and good cop here. We're all trying to muddle our way through it. So the more we can do that, I think we'll stand a good we'll be in a good position when we come out of it.
All right. Well, I hope so too. Just one question to you, Jo. It's a different question, so it doesn't follow on, I'm afraid, but I wanted to ask it. There was a story in the Telegraph yesterday about this £4 billion government bailout of the travel industry.
Yeah.
Sources that I've spoken to don't think that is going to happen. But what is your view? Do you think that is likely? Because I also had lots of people contacting me from the industry going, do you know about this? Is this true? Is this the lifeline? Is this the bailout? So you know, we don't want to give the industry false hope if this is unlikely. I mean, given what you know, and you know, is the government likely to give that level of bailout to the industry?
I'd be surprised if they gave that level of bailout to I think it's easier to relax some rules than it is to hand out cash. And right now, with the amount of cash the government is handing out, you know, on the furlough scheme, on, you know, helping grants and all sorts of stuff, you know, I think there's a lot of money flying around, and at some point we're all going to have to pay for this in some way, shape or form, which is what I'm a little bit more concerned about. Yeah. So I'm not sure that there's 4 billion that's going to come straight to our industry. And that's why I think we have to make it easy for them and show that doing it this way means less cash out of their coffers. Because look, we've all seen the stories about, you know, there's multimillionaires backing some of these businesses. Why should the government bail them out, etc.? You know, and I think we have to apply a degree of sensibility to that and reasonableness, and say, what is it the government needs to do? What can they do? I think businesses that were already on the brink or not in a good cash position, we may lose them anyway. We may have lost them anyway, even without COVID-19. So I think it's not fair to sweep everybody in one kind of fail swoop. But those that have viable businesses should absolutely be given the choice or the option to survive somehow. It's just the problem is, I think, when this all started, the aviation sector, the travel sector, the hospitality sector in a way were the first hit with all the cancellations and the immediate groundings and, you know, worldwide lockdowns and travel restrictions. And while we were kind of front and centre of the news, once everything else followed and everybody else was being shut down, you know, pubs, clubs, restaurants, whatever, retail shops, the high streets affected, we're kind of all in the same boat now. All of these businesses are, as Julia said, mothballed. They're all just stuck. They're all stuck and no one can see a way out. So who do you pay first? Who gets that money more over and above anybody else? So I think there has to be an element of what can we do to support these businesses at government level. And I still think the easiest thing is a relaxation of the PTRs from our perspective. From an airline perspective, maybe it's just as simple as a moratorium on EU 261 so that credit notes can be given instead of full refunds on airlines too, again, without taking away the right to a cash refund. Because all of this has to be with consumer acceptance, right? So whatever the consumers take, they have to agree to take it. We can't force anything on anyone. So, I'm just not sure. I'd like to see a government assistance, if you like, for our industry. I just don't know if it's going to be that level. I hope I'm proven wrong.
Okay, well, I'm just conscious of time, but just very quickly, you mentioned the grants and the loans and things that the government has made available. I know we talked a little about the furlough scheme or the staff retention scheme, but how are your members doing getting their these grants and the access to this money. I mean, it all sounded great at the start, but certainly quite a few people in the industry I've spoken to say that the actual process is, and I'm sure Jo, you've been helping lots of people with it, but is it been an easy win to get that money?
Not really. I think the grants have come in. So the grants from the local authorities, I know that most members that were expecting that's coming now.
Yeah.
The issues we have there are in Scotland. I mean, Scotland have different rules, and so that scheme isn't as easily available in Scotland. So there are some challenges there, but I know elsewhere that's gone really well. So really pleased with that. The loans, the CBILS loans, that's more challenging. I think that's probably what you referred to there, Lucy, where we've seen business apply for them, but different banks are taking a different view on what they provide their customers. So that's a bit more challenging. We have seen some. I do know for certain that a small percentage of members have successfully been able to take advantage of the CBILS schemes. But they're taking quite a lot longer to process, longer than we originally thought.
And sorry, you just mentioned banks there, and it'd be remiss of me not to ask about how worried you are around chargebacks. Either of you want to answer that? Jo, do you want to comment on that and what advice you're giving?
So we've had some guidance from Visa and MasterCard, obviously saying if they're alternative, they might look at alternative offers. Some are saying if there was a rule change, then they could defend the chargebacks. So I think, the card schemes are trying to give some positive enforcement to some of the industry measures that are taking place. But that is also depending on the card issuers playing ball with the merchants. So in some cases, I'm hearing that they're going ahead and just agreeing the chargebacks without giving them the right to reply. And that's causing a problem. I think, again, it just comes back to the sooner we get a rule change, the better it will be for everyone. But the chargebacks, if we don't get this, the chargebacks and the Consumer Credit Act claims, those are the things that are going to really affect business. And then they're going to be charged on top for processing those claims, which is worse.
Julia, you're nodding. I mean, we've had people say that, to have survived this far, but if the chargeback suddenly hit, in scale, that will be the thing that will then put people under.
Yeah, and that's building. So that is, we haven't seen it up until now, but that is starting to build. So we have written to all our supplier partners that an email went out last week, just reminding them that our members are agents on their behalf. Yeah. So if the customer processes any or puts in place a chargeback to the agent, we will be going back to the operator and expecting them to process that chargeback, because we're only acting as an agent. So we've got to make that real distinction there. So if you're an agent, the chargeback goes back to the operator. You may need to obviously get in contact with the operator to make sure that can be processed in the right way. But that is not a chargeback for the agents who are operating as an agent to process.
Okay, all right. And have you had any response from the operators yet, or is it too soon?
I think it's too soon. As I said before, I think you'll have those that are working with us really closely, and you'll have those that aren't. But it's not an agent's chargeback.
Fine. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm conscious of time, ladies, but we've covered a lot. I hope that people will have a watch of this and get some really good tips and advice from both of you. We wish you all the very best, Julia, with your members. And hope that everything gets a little calmer. I know you say every day is like a new day and you just got to take each day as it comes, which is probably very good advice, but I know you're giving some fantastic support to all your members, as are you, Jo. So thank you very much, Jo Kolatsis from Themis Advisory and Julia Bue-Said, I knew I'd get it wrong, from Advantage Travel Partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.